Oh, well, a very, very good morning to you, and welcome to Create and Craft. My name is Jennie Rayment, and I'm with the lovely Jennie Rayment. Good morning to you. Oh, give me a hug.
Give me a big hug.
Now, this is the fourth instalment of Jennie Rayment's Quilting Classroom. And we've got so much to show you as well, and a lot here, of course. It's almost coming to an end.
It is almost coming. In fact, this is the last one on that quilt.
Yes.
We've been working towards this for... the last 3 sessions?
Yes.
But if people have missed out, if you go to Create and Craft's website and put in Quilting Classroom, you can see certainly 1, if not 2 of the previous shows. If you go to my website and you want all the PDFs, JennieRayment.com, look on the left, Create and Craft page sampler. It's got all the PDFs on and a picture. You can print them off and do what you like with them. So no excuse for not having the instructions.
No excuse whatsoever, of course. Now, if you want to email us in, you can, of course, email us in at studio@createandcraft.tv. If you've got any questions at all for Jennie, she's here to answer them. Or you just want to send in pictures of what you've already done throughout the Quilting Classroom. We've got a book to give away at the end for the winner, which we pick out of the Magic Cup. Now, this is what we've been working towards, and I have to say, I walk into the studio this morning, there it is in its glory.
Right, that one's actually
colour.
finished.
That is beautiful, and that's what we are working towards, of course, with the 4th instalment here of your Quilting Classroom. 271330 is the item number for the blocks there. We've got lots of blocks coming up today and 2 new blocks also. This is the one that we're making today. And the one, of course, and the other one, let me give you the details of this. Spinning star. Beautiful. A little bit of movement in there as well, isn't there?
And not difficult to do. We have easy ways of doing all these things.
Oh, we do. Keep tuned to Jennie because she will show you those ways, of course. Now, you will need a few bits and bobs, of course, during the show, and we're going to go down the counter and show you exactly what you're going to need. We're going to start with, of course, your backing fabric. Now, then, what do we need this for, Jennie?
You need it for backing the quilt.
Aha.
You see? That's why it's called backing fabric. Now, what we have here is 3 meters of blue for the blue and yellow option, or we've got the beige one for the red and green option.
Lovely.
There's enough backing fabric there to do the single quilt we have there. There's 3 meters, and I will mention and show how I would use the backing fabric so it goes on the back of the quilt. So you need this for backing your quilt, and it's at a cracking good price, actually.
It is a cracking good price. $29.69 is the price there. For you, 271330 is the item number, and that is your backing fabric for block of the month, and that's the complete fabric bundle there. 2 colours for you. Now, we're also talking, of course, about your, now this is the cotton batting.
Yes,
so of course, this is to give the inside
thing.
there.
Now, we call it wadding over here. This is an American product, and they call it batting. And when you have batting and backing fabric, you've got to get your B's all in the right order. So wadding sometimes differentiates it from the backing. See, even I get in the muddle. So this is the wadding, and this is absolutely a super wadding. It's light, it's washable, it's easy to work on, and I think the nice thing about it is when you lay the fabrics on top, because it's slightly furry, the fabric actually sticks to it, and it doesn't shift anywhere near so much, so it does make it much easier for hand and machine quilting.
Perfect. So if you want to go for this, it's 252,259, £15 and 29 pence is your club price there as well. You've got a masking tape and pen here, of course. Now, these are kind of the tools, aren't they? The essential tools.
They are.
Here.
Masking tape is very useful when you come to quilting because you lay it down the edge of the seam and you quilt beside it, making a sort of echo of the seam line. So that is great. It's also just great for putting on if you need to have a seam allowance, you can mask, and indeed sticking anything. I very often use it to stick the 1/4 inch seam allowance on my sewing machine, as you will see. That pen, invaluable. You can use it for marking your quilting designs. It's air erasable and washable, so it will come out.
269021 is the item number there for you, and just £4 and 49 pence here. Rather spectacular rectangular ruler here for you also. So this is great. And another, again, these are the tools now that you're going to be needing.
I would not be without one of those.
Oh, really?
You need a big ruler. I mean, if you're beginning, people often email me and say, what do I need to begin with? You need a ruler this size.
Right.
With this, you can cut your big strips. It fits on the cutting mat. It holds the fabric well. It cuts any size up to 6.5 inches. It is an invaluable tool to begin with.
Right. Okay, and if you do want to go for this one, this is 203-628, £19 and 79 pence. Now, usually with the rulers, they do go very quickly, so keep your eye on these as well if you want to get them. We've also got the square ruler, so again, invaluable, Jennie.
Invaluable. Many designs in the patchwork world need a 12.5 inch square, as indeed in the scrapbook world, you need a 12 inch square. So this will cut any square you like from 1/4 inch up to 12.5. Now, the advantage of both these 2 rulers is they work with a TrueCut cutter because there's a ridge down the edge there that fits on the groove in the cutter. They'll see when I demo.
Perfect. 203-611 is the item number, and that's just $17.99. Of course, a lot of people going for both of these, I would say, as well, just to have
again an invaluable thing to
yes,
have.
absolutely.
Beginning people, one of those and one of those, ace.
Right. And also something else for you as well. Now we have your little collection here. You've got your grabbers, you've got your clips, and you have got your needles. And these are the gold eye needles as well. Now, you know, for essential tools along the counter here today, we're going to be seeing you using these.
Why? Well, these go on the bottom of your rulers and your templates, and they stop them from slipping. Many templates are just made of an acrylic, and they slide when you put them on the fabric. That will stop it from sliding anywhere near so much. Now, these aren't bicycle clips, okay? Do not use them as bicycle clips. They are very strange to get round the leg. They're actually for holding the quilt when you roll the quilt up to put it under the machine, or perhaps when you want to roll it up when you're hand quilting. So curtains, it works the same. Oh. So, I mean, these tools really are ideal for curtain people, dressmakers, anyone like that who want to roll the fabric, because you roll it up, you stick it in the clip, and it doesn't become unrolled. It stays, and of course it's nice and flat.
Nice and clever. And of course you have the needles in here as well.
Brilliant for curtain making as well as quilting. They go through all the layers. They're long, they're sharp, there's a big eye, so when you're tacking or basting your quilt up, depending on which language you're using, those are great.
Perfect. Now if you want to go for all three, of course, just £7.19, 265454 is the item number. You've also got the pencil pack here with all the accessories as well. You've got the eraser and you have got the sharpener included here. This is just £6.29. And of course, Jenny, you know, for anyone wondering why they need these, was, you know.
But you need the sharpener to sharpen the pencils. The pencils come in 3 colours, one for templates, brilliant. Eraser to rub it out, and it just is a neat kit. I mean, hey, come on, if you're going to stick it in your basket, you might as well.
Exactly, yeah. £6.29 there. 263496 is the item number there for you. Now, also we have your diamond cutters as well, and 2 of these, and if you've got your 45 degree here, and you've also got your 60 degree. So what would we use these for?
You can't do today's class without those.
Right, okay. So
well,
these
you
are
can
essential.
do today's class without these, but the spinning star comes from that one, and the tumbling blocks comes from that one. And in the 11 o'clock show, I'll show more ways of using both templates, but obviously in today's show, I'm just using them for the specific blocks.
Right. So if you want to grab these, of course, £19
That's a very good price.
That is a good price.
That
for both
is a
of
good
these.
price.
That's great. That's the multi-buy price, so you are saving on this as well. 206561 is the item number there, and make that saving also. And now we also have the tacking gun as well. This is great. We're just talking about this before the show as well. Great, just if you want to do quick stitches.
Quick stitches.
There you
if
go.
you want a hem goes down in your skirt, if you want to baste your quilts together, tack them together, you use that tag gun. I keep one in the car. You know, when I caught my skirt on the car or something like that, or the hem of my sleeves coming down, a few tags in it. Curtains, boom, boom, boom along the bottom. That is a great, nifty little gadget. Comes with 2 sorts of tags. Comes with the black ones for dark colours, light ones or natural ones for cream fabrics. But if you're quilting and you want to tack your quilt up, use dark on light and light on dark. Then you can see it to take it out.
Perfect. 242648 is the item number. £20.69 is the price there for you. And also now we have the bias tape maker, and this always gets really busy for this when we bring it to the show.
We'll show everybody what's inside it, but this is how neat and tidy it packs up. I shall be using that later, and believe you me, it makes binding quilts, binding dresses, binding everything absolutely amazing.
Now, if you do want to go for this, it is $44.99. 185138 is the item number, and you've got FlexiPay on this. So 2 payments of £22.50 there for you. So, of course, if you do want to go for this today, you can open a Flexi basket and go for everything else divided by 2 payments. Now, also, I want to show you the clips that go with this now. We've got 2 different sets here. This is the first set, and now you've got 3 different sizes also.
Right. These fold the fabric,
right?
So you get a completely folded strip. It takes the strain off the fabric. When you're ironing fabric, you can stretch it. If you put it through that machine, it does 12 feet, I think, in a minute. So it's very quick. It doesn't put any stress on the fabric, and it will send out quilt binding in 3 different sizes. You've got 7/8, 1 inch, and 1 1/8. Right. So they will do binding for perhaps garments. You might want a little double binding for something small, or a small quilt or a table mat. So you've got 3 sizes. Invaluable collection to add to the one that comes comes with the bias binding maker.
And that you've got FlexiPay, of course, on the bias maker. You can have your FlexiPay on these as well, so pop them into that basket as well. 192663 is the item number there for you. And now we have more bias tape clips here as well. A few so slightly smaller as well.
Well,
These ones,
this is a complementary bundle. I think this one is a sort of the essential bundle if you're not going to buy specific ones, because this gives you 3/8 of an inch bias binding, and this is the binding that the machine is usually does, which is sides to middle.
Right.
That one is the largest quilt binding tip, which folds the fabric and does quilt binding at 1 1/4 inches. And that one is another bias one for, again, doing sides to middle. So that's sort of multi-bundle for people doing quilts, doing dressmaking, doing curtains, doing anything you like, where you want 3 different sizes of binding and indeed 1 size of quilt tip.
Perfect. Also pop that in your flexi basket if you've opened that today. 180864 is the item number, just £10.79. And something else we see Jenny using a lot, of course, is the little mini iron here, your Clover mini iron. And now this, of course, for, you know, it is another essential
It's
along
invaluable
here, isn't
to
it?
take to class. It's invaluable to have, you know, if you're perhaps working in a small space, you use that.
Yep.
It has a lovely little head to it, so it gets really into the cracks. Anyone doing any fine work, perhaps dressmakers who want to press their frills very carefully, that is ideal. It comes with, you can adapt the head, it comes with a screwdriver, so you can undo that and put different heads on. It only comes with the one head, but you can buy others. Great tool, neat, easy to carry, fits into your bag, you know, small spaces, brilliant.
192527. You've also got FlexiPay there as well for you on that one as well. Now Jenny's going to go off. She's going to get ready, of course, for the start of your quilting classroom. While Jenny does that, I'm just going to let you know how to order also. Now we have so many quilting items on the website right now. All the W's, createandcraft.tv. Have a look there through everything, and remember you've got FlexiPay in the show also. Now, of course, you have everything there on the website. You can also order on the phones, which is 09056 480 480, and that website there, lots and lots of detail there. I'm going to hand over to the wonderful, wonderful Jenny now, and she's going to start the quilting classroom with you. Take over, Jenny.
All that hyperbole, and I've got to live up to it. Morning all. Right, I hope you're sitting comfortably. Let the show begin. Now, before I actually start, producer John has actually done his homework. And he's done 2 blocks, admittedly from the first classroom. It's only taken him 3 months to get it here. But he did the log cabin. And look how beautifully neat and tidy it is on the back. And he did another piece of work, another log cabin, which he's turned into, I think it's going to be a little cushion cover, or it may be going to be a table mat. It's a thing. Like the colours. Now, very nicely done. Well done, John. But some of you may be thinking, oh, I get so worried, I don't know where to begin. Last time I was on the show, we had the Dear Jane book, and I'm going to show you one picture. Now, this is in a book. There are thousands, probably millions of copies of this book. And if we can get the camera really close on this little picture, this is just to show you how extraordinarily naff, okay, the piecing is. Look at the size of the different pieces. They are very irregular. That's in a book. People buy the book. So all you beginners out there who are sitting there trembling, thinking, oh, I don't know whether it'll be any good and the quilt police won't like it. Don't. Stop fussing. Have a go. If your points aren't perfect, it doesn't matter. It's sewing. It's not life-threatening. Play. Try it. You know, you can only make a bish of it once. And if you do make a real bish of it, put a button on it. Right, we are going to be doing today something called the tumbling block. And if you've got any questions, send us in an email. If I can't get around to reading them this time, I will read them between now and 11, and I will come back with the answers. If you do send an email in this show, you get a chance to get that particular book. Right, tumbling blocks. What are tumbling blocks? Tumbling blocks basically are an illusion. And it is 3 diamonds that you put together, and depending on your colours, you get a subtle illusion of 3-dimensional. And the tumbling block itself is made using a 60-degree diamond. And here we have the 60-degree diamond. This particular diamond, for those who sort of want a bit more information, is often called a short diamond because of the angles, but don't fuss about that. To you, it's just a 60-degree diamond. I need to cut 3 diamonds from this template in 3 different colours. Ideally, to create the 3D effect, you want a light, a medium and a dark. Now, the size of diamond I need to cut to fit my quilt block is going to be 2 3/4 inch strip. Now you could make this bigger or you could make it smaller. All these instructions are on the PDF you can find on the Create and Craft website or indeed on my own website. And hopefully I've got the spelling correct and all the sizes correct. Initially I need to cut a 2 3/4 inch strip. So for those who haven't seen it before, usually I start off with trimming off the end of my fabric to make it nice and level. Take a smidge off the end, guard off your cutter, and this particular cutter is so good because it works by sitting on the edge of the ruler, so that if I wobble because I'm perhaps panicking or I'm nervous, I can't deviate from the edge, and it does make cutting very easy. I will toss my strips on the floor, you won't, and I have to promise the floor lady to go and pick them all up afterwards. I'm now going to cut a 2 3/4 inch strip. Now I'm right-handed, so I've got the fabric on the right and the ruler is coming in from the left. The ruler is now covering up 2 3/4 inches of material. Guard off your cutter, fit the rotary cutter on the groove and cut along. And there is my 2 3/4 inch strip. Now, to make the tumbling blocks, you're going to need a green one, and I've got a yellow one, and I've got a blue one. Once you've got your 3 strips cut, then I suggest you lay them out and you actually multi-cut. But if you are worried, cut singly. Now, some people have heard me rattle on about the grain, and occasionally it is quite useful to get the grain of the tumbling block correct. I'm not going to fuss about the grain in this particular workshop because it might just be a little bit too complex for the moment, the time I've got. So I'm just going to cut up my 3 diamonds willy-nilly along the strip of the fabric. I would naturally multi-cut by putting my 3 fabrics in a layer, but if it worries you, then cut them out singly. To multi-cut, lay your fabrics out like that, trim the end off. Now what you don't do is cut towards you. You always turn the fabric round and chop the ends off. So back with my ruler again, put the ruler on the top there, guard off your cutter, cutter on the groove, up the edge there, and discard the pieces carefully, not too much on the floor. Right, having done that, I'm going to take the diamond. Now there is the diamond. I need to cut 2 3/4 inches, and on this particular diamond, the 2 3/4 inch line actually that I'm using is the one that is here. It does say an arrow pointing to 2.5 inches finished height. That is 2 3/4 inches. If you're not sure, you could always measure it on the ruler. If I have my strips here on the right and put the cutter on top, that makes life very awkward. So I need to turn the strips around, replace the cutter, putting the edge of the cutter, the template on the edge of the fabric, guard off my rotary cutter and cut up the side there, dispose of the pieces. What I can't do is cut towards me, nor can I cut accurately, so I'm going to turn it round that way, replace the template on the top, bring it in so it is aligned with that 2.5 inches finished height dotty line. Cut up the side, and you'll need to do this 3 times. So there's 1, replace the template, cut out 2, and replace the template and cut out 3. So there are my 3 sections. How is the design going to be laid out? Right, so there's the 3 sections. Let's just dispose of that. The tumbling block looks like this. It's going to have a blue one, and it's going to have a green one, and it's going to have a yellow one there. Let's just undo the end that's got a bit screwed up there. That is a basic tumbling block. Now, the problem with tumbling blocks is how you stitch it together. And this is your problem in the middle. It's not a straight seam. Now, in the patchwork world, you've either got something where you sew straight across, or you've got something often called an insertion or a Y-shaped seam. There is your Y-shaped seam. When you have this sort of junction, you do not stitch right to the very ends of the seams, you stop. And it pays on your pieces to turn them over and in the centre mark a 1/4 inch seam allowance. This little dot is a 1/4 inch from the edge of the fabric on both sides, and you'll find that really useful. Okay, having got my pieces, I'm now going to go to the sewing machine. Taking the 2 bits, and there's the bottom of the tumbling block, I'm going to put the green on top of the blue. Now it pays, please, it pays when you come to do the stitching, whether you're doing it by hand or machine, do it in the same order, because if you don't, the tumbling blocks aren't identical. I've layered the two fabrics together to the sewing machine. I'm going to start my stitching on that little dot. Now this little machine, although it says Super Jeans on it, will actually sew anything. And I really like the sewing table that comes with it. This for me is an absolute plus. Now the machine comes with a regular presser foot, but if I use this presser foot, I cannot easily get 1/4 inch. So I have two options. Option number one is to purchase a 1/4 inch foot, and they're not expensive. And the nice thing about this Toyota is it will take just about any Janome or any Brother or any Elna foot. Feet these days are multi-changeable. Or you can put on the machine a small bit of masking tape to mark the distance from the needle to the edge of the masking tape, giving me my 1/4 inch seam allowance. No reason why you can't mark it with masking tape so you're getting your teeth in the wrong place. Beginning my stitching, what I often like to do is to take the piece, lower the machine down so it starts on the dot. Put the presser foot down. You, of course, will be able to sit down. I have to stand up. And you will proceed to sew in orderly fashion all the way along the end. Now, you've very often seen me use something that I call a thread saver. Thread savers here are not that useful, but what a thread saver is a scrap of fabric you sew onto at the end of the stitching. And if I turn this round, you can see I started my stitching exactly at the dot. Open the fabric out, and there is 2 parts of the tumbling block. Take the diamond, the yellow one in my case. This is going to be inserted into that seam. Put it on the left-hand side, and if I'm looking at it, this is my left. If I turn it round that way, you can see, okay? Is that your left? Great. Okie dokie, sorted. Pop it on there, line up the raw edges, and you're probably going to want to put a pin in it just to hold it in place. I like to put my pins at right angles to the stitching, because that will hold the fabric, and I can take the pin out, because we don't sew over pins, do we? No, miss. Right, if anyone who sews over pins, oh dear. You can see now why, in fact, the thread saver is a bit of a pain, because I've got to take it out. For doing this particular design, it's one of the few times when I wouldn't use a thread saver. Again, I'm going to drop my needle down into the start of the seam. So needle down, lower presser foot, set off. Now with all these shapes, you sew to the very end and you sew off the end. There's no leaving a seam allowance at the end. You just sew off the end. So sew off the end, raise the presser foot, pull the fabric out. And now you can see that I've actually stitched, let me cut those threads away, from that dot to the end. Nothing has gone the other side of those little marks there. Right, twiddle the yellow shape round. I'm going to turn him round. You're going round a corner. Realign the pieces. And you have a choice. You can either sew from there to the end, or you can sew from the outside to this little mark here. It doesn't really matter. The choice is yours. But you want to do no sewing the other side of that little dot. Promise? Good. Right, underneath the sewing machine, again, I like to lower the presser foot. Hold your threads, because if you don't, sometimes they all make a mare's nest or a bird's nest underneath. Remember, you take the pin out when you get there. And I'm going to sew up to that little dot. And if you've got a fix button, if you happen to have one of those sewing machines, this doesn't have a fix button, but a trick I can use is just to hold the fabric and not let it go very far. Just do a couple of stitches almost on the spot. Right, having done that, if I now turn it over, there are my 3 pieces together. Right, back to the drawing board. To make the tumbling blocks, you will have to repeat that 3 times. So we'll have to make 1, 2, and 3 of them. Now, when it comes to joining them together, 2 of them have to be joined together. So there is my little pyramid. Number 1 there, number 2. When I come to join the 2 together, let me rescue this one. Again, it pays to lay it out how you want the design to appear, because it's ever so easy to join the wrong pieces together. Take 2, the lower 2 on the tumbling block, stitch them together, put them right sides together, line up the raw edges, and once more you move all the seams out of the way. Your stitching is going to start on the seam line and go to the end. No one is going to stitch that side, are you? No, miss. I like obedience in my students. And you can see on this one where I started and I sewed exactly to the end. This is giving me a little gap at the top here. And that little gap is the same thing that I had in the middle of the tumbling block to allow me to insert that into the shape and stitch it. So when you come to put it in, again, put it on the left-hand side, line up all the raw edges, move the seams right out the way. None of those seams are to be caught in the stitching whatsoever. You will then do your stitching from the edge to the line there. Having done that, and I'll just put a pin in it, there we go, and then swing it round the other way and complete the seam. Now, when you come to swing it round the other way and complete the seam, you are very likely to get a little hole in the middle. Don't panic, it can be stitched up by hand. So you are going to, at no point in time, get these seams in the stitching, are you? No. Right. Having done that, press all the seams open and flat, and this is where that little clover thing is absolutely invaluable. It's turned off at the moment. I wouldn't do this with it turned on, but it will really get into the seams and flatten it down. And the seams flat. In the middle there, you want to sort of spin them round so they make a sort of fan shape. At this stage now, it could be applied to the backing square. Those of you who like handwork could simply lay your square tumbling block on top, pin it down and then carefully turn the raw edges under and slip stitch it in by hand. If you didn't know how to do it accurately around the edge, you could always use the quilter's quarter we've had on so many shows to actually draw your seam allowance and fold it on the seam allowance. But that's effort. Do I do effort? No, of course I don't do effort. What I use is a bit of interfacing, or you could use a thin bit of any old fabric you like. Put the interfacing on the back, lay the tumbling block on top, pin it in place, and then you sew right the way round the entire caboodle, as per this one. And here we have it sewn round the edge. Once you've sewn all the way round the edge, trim off all the interfacing. And not only trim off the interfacing, but clip the corners off, and indeed I clip it at that junction. Carefully, don't go through the stitching. Once you've turned all the interfacing off, then you are going to split the interfacing, so turn it over, take your scissors, where's my scissors gone to, there's a pair, and slit the interfacing. Do not slit the top fabric, okay, so pick it up carefully, the sort of thing I would do on television. And this is live, by the way, for those of you who say to me, is it live? Yes, it's live. This is really live, it is really 8:27 in the morning. You will then turn it through the hole, and here it is turned through the hole. Once you've turned it through the hole, press it nice and carefully. This gets laid onto the square, and that's where this is so useful, because you can draw exactly round that, cut round it, and you've got an exact 12.5-inch square. A little quick tip, to position it, I press the fabric in half and in half again, and indeed in half and in half again, and there we are, put it in the middle there. Once you've got it centred, so that the lines all go through the same parts, then you can simply apply it down. And that can be done by hand, oh, perish the thought, or on the sewing machine. Now, that is tumbling blocks. What have we got for the next one? Well, the next one is the spinning star. And the spinning star will require you to have 2 templates, or it is very much useful to have 2 templates. One is the 45-degree diamond, and the other is the easy angle. Now, we haven't got the easy angle on today's show, but if you go onto the website and put in easy angle into the search engine, you will get up the 6.5 easy angle. So diamond and easy angle. Right, the spinning star will look something like this when you've done it. And here we have the blue and yellow version. When it comes to the 11 o'clock show, I will show you how to make a cheats version of the 8-point star, and indeed explain how the regular 8-point star goes together. But that's to come, so you have to keep watching. You're allowed breakfast between 10 and 11. To make the spinning star, you need the 2 templates. You need to cut yourself a 3.5-inch strip of fabric. Now, I'm using yellow for the centre section. So cut the strip of fabric using your rotary cutter and the TrueCut ruler, or whichever ruler you're using. The trick with the template, and I'll level the end off, is you have to cut your 4 pieces, the yellow sections, have got to be cut out from the fabric with the same side up. You cannot fold the fabric. I meant to check my instructions to make certain I did actually underline this. Do not fold the fabric. And the reason is you've got to cut all your strips out in the same direction. I'm just about to use the wrong diamond. It's the 45 diamond you need, the 45-degree one. Place the diamond on the strip, same thing we did with the tumbling blocks, cut up one side. If you find it wobbles, then those little sticky, grippy things we showed you earlier actually are very good to stop it sliding. Having cut one angle, you are going to turn the fabric round. Now, this is going to seem a strange measurement, but you have to cut this measurement out because we want the block to end up as 12.5 inches. The measurement on this particular thing is 2 5/8. Now, you're going to have perhaps a little bit of difficulty in finding the 2 5/8, but that is 2 inches, that is 2.5, that is 3. This is 2 3/4. 2 5/8 is midway between these two lines. Pop the diamond on there, lining it up with the bottom. There is your 2 5/8. It's midway between the two lines, midway between a solid line and a dotted line. Guard off your cutter. Remember, those little sticky things are absolutely ideal. Cut up the edge of the template. And you do exactly that 4 times. Nobody, please, please, don't fold the fabric in half. All right, let's get this in the right place now. I get so overexcited I'll cut completely the wrong ones. We need 4 of these cuttings, so repeat. When you've got 4 of those, you will want to cut from another strip, and I use blue for one and the creamy colour for the other. From these strips, and again they're 3.5 inches, you need to cut some triangles. And I'm going to use the easy angle. I can now cut my fabric with the fabric folded over. So there is the fabric. Trim the end off, which I've already done. Place the template on top, aligning the 3.5 inch line with the top of the fabric. This funny little dot down the bottom, don't worry about it. It will become clear in just a moment. Guard off your cutter. That will give you 2 triangles. You need 4. To make the next lot, don't flip the fabric over, simply turn the template. If you turn the template over, move that out of the way, and align it so that that little black dot now is off the end, okay, and cut again. Now that actually indicates your seam allowance, and using these templates saves you 3/8 of an inch strip of fabric on every single triangle, and that really does mount up. You're going to need 4 blue ones. You're going to need to cut 4 cream ones. We want 4 yellow ones, and then from a 3.5 inch blue strip, you want to cut 4 3.5 inch blue squares. Once you've cut all the pieces, they get laid out like so. So move that out of the way. Let's get rid of all the tumbling blocks in true fashion. The star sections, the spinning star sections, one goes there, and one goes there, and one goes. Yeah, let's get them in the right place, or else you'll all be on the phone saying, oh, she's got it wrong again. She probably has. Trying to do this at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then we've got the blue triangles. One of them's going to go in there, and one of them's going to go in there, and one of them's going to go in there. There we go, and one in there. And then we've got the white triangles. Again, move those bits out of the way. And the white one's going to go there, and there, and there, and there. And then you've got your blue squares. Let's get them in the wrong place there. And I forgot to mention you'll need 4 cream ones as well. So you want 4 3.5 blue and 4 cream 3.5. And they go, one goes there, one goes there, one goes there, one goes there. And then your blue ones finish it off. Now this seems like a horrendous amount of pieces, and I can hear you think, oh God, we'll never get through all that. It's fairly simple to piece together. Break it down. Those 2 go together. That goes together as a little unit. And you repeat that 3 more times. Put the blue square in there. That together, those together. That together, those together, that together. So deal with all the squares first. Let's get those out of the way. Simply put 2 squares, right sides together, and sew along the edge. I like to, when I've done that, press the seam open and flat. So there it is, open and flat. So we want 4 like that. Let's get rid of all these pieces. It's going to be the most glorious mess on the floor afterwards. There's my 4 there. Now, when it comes to adding the triangles, The triangles get added to the yellow bits and they get put on the right side. So do make certain you put them on the correct side. It will be the longer side of the diamond shape and it goes the stretchy side. One blue one goes on one side, stitch it on, open it out, and then one white one goes on the other side. And you can now laugh at me because I'm going to have to scrabble on the floor and pick one up. There we go. And one's going to go on the other side. This will make an oblong, a rectangle. Now the great thing about these templates is when you actually cut them out, if I stick that on there and hold it carefully and point with me scissors, can you see the little bit that's missing here? That's it. Right, that little bit denotes my seam allowance. So if I actually stitch through there and come out the other end where it crosses over, that will be my 1/4 inch seam allowance. And those templates make life very simple because they make it accurate. Right, you are going to add a blue triangle to one end of the yellow section and a cream one to the other end. And don't forget you can find all these on the PDF. Lay the design out, and here is the design laid out again. Let's get it around the right way. I always get slightly challenged with this at the moment. Pinwheels and things, I don't know, for some reason pinwheels, slightly dyslexic possibly. I know that fits. It did fit this morning, it does fit. I'm going to go all in the muddle again. Think, Jennifer, how's it gone wrong? Can't have gone wrong. It's going the other way, that's why. This is where I should get in a horrible panic and want to go home. Not allowed to go home, they won't let me. There we go. All right. Helps if you just draw a deep breath and remember it is only live television and there are no children and there are no dogs and I should be all right. There we go. Right, there is a design when laid out. I would now stitch them together into sets of 2. So join those 2 together. This is the one awkward part of this block. When you come to join these 2 together, they actually line up, and if I hold this very carefully, they line up not on the edge, but the seams line up on the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So what you're looking at is getting the seam on the squares lined up a 1/4 inch in with the diagonal on the diamond, and that is the important bit you're after. So don't try to fix it on the outside edge. The 2 pieces line up on the seam allowance line. Remember, buttons are brilliant. You will join these sections together, making a set of 4. Here we have the set of 4. See if I can put these together in any better way. There we go. When you've got the set of 4, put the other one round there, then all I would do then at that stage is join it together as 2 halves. Now all these little ears, the little ears need to be trimmed off. I like to trim my ears off once I've completed the stitching. I also like to press my seam open and flat, and that is where the clover tool is remarkably good for getting into those little seams. Having made up the 4 blocks, I'll stitch 2 together. It would be really rather nice if in the centre you lined the seams up. Would be nice, okay? Remember, a button works quite well. Having got the 2 halves together, it's going to look something like this. And where's the other one gone to? It's fallen on the floor. There we go. There are our 2 halves. Now, what we are after is getting those 2 little points together in the very middle. These 2, that one and that one. It should be a 1/4 inch from the edge of the fabric to the top of the point. It may not be. You might need a button or a Suffolk puff or something like that. But when you come to put the 2 together, some people like to use the pin trick where you put a pin through the top of these points and then a pin through the one underneath. If you're going to do that, leave the pin sticking up, because the second you move it, you'll shift the points. I tend to go for the have a look at it and fiddle around and pray sort of mode, where I'll sew to about there, look at it, scrabble around a bit, get me points together, cross my fingers, sew straight past, hoping that I don't need too much of a button in the middle. And when you've done that, give it a real good press with those seams open and flat. Now, you've now made 12 blocks. So what are we going to do? Okay, let's get rid of all of this stuff. I can have a lovely time sorting it all out later. Anybody want to come and help? There's a mess on the floor. Now, depending on whether you've got 9 blocks, whether you've got 6 blocks, or how many blocks you need. Your blocks, my friends, need to be the same size, all right? Ideally, they should be 12.5 inches, but they could be absolutely anything. I found this tool to be very useful in getting my blocks lined up. It's one we had on the show a little week ago, I think, or so, called Is It Square? And round the edge here is a very clear 1/4 inch lined line, so you can actually put it on the work and check the design is square. I found the other lines on the template very good because they lined up with seam lines. So is it square, which you can find by going into the Create and Craft website, put in is it square, it will come up. That was a useful tool. Your intention now is to make all 12 or 9 or 6 the same size. You might want to have 9 together and get a square. You might want to have 6 and have something like a small quilt behind me. You might want to have 12 and make a single bed quilt. You might want to have 25. Lay them out. And it pays to lay them out in a sort of orderly fashion. You could copy what I've done, or you could come up with your own design. So there are all your blocks. And haven't you worked hard? Well, some of you have, even if it does take you 3 months to actually get the thing together. Now, in between the blocks, we have a strip. Now, there's no reason why you couldn't stitch the blocks together just by themselves. But in between these blocks, there is a strip. And this strip is often called sashing. And the sashing separates the blocks and actually adds to sort of the overall grid. And it's very useful because it means you haven't got the bulky seams in, say, one block going along with the bulky seams in another block. It gives it a sort of rest. You could use the sashing any size you liked. And indeed, on this small piece, this has been sashed. These were just literally strips of fabric put together. Because the sashing now and the whole thing is so big, there just isn't room in the studio to lay everything out. So I'm making a very much smaller sample. So here we have sashing. Sashing has to be the same size as the blocks. Now, there's no reason why you have to have just one single strip. You could actually have your sashing made up out of different strips stitched together. But whatever the sashing is, you will need your sashing lengths to be the same size as your blocks, which are all the same size, aren't they? Yes, good. Right, I like obedience. You're all sitting there terrified, thinking, oh dear, we better... If they aren't the same size, add a border, all right? You know, if you have... And remember the one in the book I showed you? It wasn't perfect. Nothing is perfect in this life. Enjoy your sewing. Relax. It's sewing. It's not life-threatening. Okay. Although to some people you might think it was. If I were going to do sashing, and here is a really small sample, this represents your blocks, okay? There's no reason, of course, why you couldn't have plain blocks. That's a really easy option. If you lay all your blocks out in the pattern you wish to have them, you then cut strips the same size, or the same length rather, as your blocks by whatever width you liked. The width I used on mine was a cut measurement of 3.5 inches. So the strips are the same size as the blocks. It pays, when you lay them out, to lay the things out and number them, because then you'll get them in the same order. Or you could always take a picture with your phone, because believe you me, by the time you start picking everything up and sewing with it on the machine, you can get in a horrible muddle. What I like to have between each of the blocks in the middle here is something what's called a cornerstone, a little square. Now, I have been asked, why don't you stitch that block to that block, inserting that piece, and this to that, inserting that, and put one long strip right the way across the middle? The snag with that is you try lining up those two seams with those two seams across a single strip in the middle. It's well nigh on impossible. And it does look funny to have a single strip without any seams. This at least gives it sort of meaning. I think it looks better. But you know, there are lots of schools of thought out there, and nothing is perfect, and certainly not my sewing. If I were going to add sashing, I lay the things out on the floor, number them, pick them up systematically, and add the strips systematically. So I would pick up this bit and this bit, add one side strip. I then take one cornerstone and stitch it to the end of one of the other sashing strips and stitch it on, so it will look something like that. And you go on gradually building up the design. Sometimes you'll be stitching on one piece, sometimes you'll be stitching on two pieces. Once you've done the entire thing, that is when, I'll move all those out the way and go back to the other piece, I would actually take the design. So we've now got the sashing on. I would measure the sides and cut a strip to fit the sides. And here is, you will measure it, my friends. No being a lopper, which is taking a strip, adding it on with a bit hanging out the end, okay? And you wobble your way down to the bottom, and you leave a bit hanging off, and you lop it off. We don't do lopping, do we? No, we don't. Why don't we do lopping? The reason why we don't do lopping is the bit that sort of goes down, wobbles its way down this side, might be a bit longer than the bit that goes down that side. So you have been warned. It actually pays to measure the sides, cut 2 strips the same length, put one on one side, pinning it at the ends, stitch it on, make this fit the strip. It's called easing, or giving it a jolly good push or pull in technical terms. Once you've added the side pieces, then you would measure top and bottom and do the same thing. When the quilt top, the cushion, the cot quilt, or whatever it is the correct side, you're now into putting it onto its wadding and its backing fabric. I usually call this wadding, let's have it the right way up. In case you're in Australia, then it will be the right way up. I usually call this wadding simply because otherwise it distinguishes it from the backing fabric. The Americans call it batting, so this is an American product, but it's excellent for what we're doing. You will need some backing and some wadding to finish off the quilt. The pieces of fabric that we've got on the show for you, the 3 meters, these will need to be joined together. Now, there are a variety of ways of joining the backing for quilts together, but the easiest way to do it with this particular piece of fabric is simply chop it in half, and if I go back there a little bit, chop it in half down the fold and join one end to the other, making a nice big piece of material. All right. Ideally, you don't do that, but it's going to be by far and away the easiest way to do it for this particular quilt. So chop them in half, join it across the middle, having cut your selvages off, and press that seam open and flat. We're now into putting the quilt together. So here I have a smaller sample, again on the show. There just isn't the room. I mean, when I suggested that we had a carpet put out on the studio floor, and I crawled around the studio floor for the entire show, horror! Oh my goodness me, you can't do that. We've just painted the floor. And it's very hard sticking pins into a solid concrete floor. You have no idea how it draws the feet. Right, that's an old expression for you. Those youngsters won't know about feet drawing. Okay, once you've made your design, you need to layer it up. I like to put my backing fabric on the floor, on the carpet, and I will pin the backing fabric to the carpet with my pins going in at 45 degrees, and I flatten it. Having done that, lay the wadding on top and again pin the wadding down, and then you put your quilt on top and pull it all straight. Now, if you can't crawl on the floor, which not all of us can, you could always do this on a table. You might not have a big enough table, so it might be well worth going around your friend's house and seeing if they've got a bigger table, or perhaps going to your local quilt shop and asking if you can borrow their table. Once you've got the layers together, you have a choice. You can either go for the good old-fashioned way that many people love to do, and indeed I do if I'm making an exhibition quilt, is I will tack it together using the long basting needles. These are great because they've got big eyes. You thread the thread through and you just tack the layers up. You work from the centre out. And I tend to tack a bit like the Union flag, north and south, west and east. Then I do the diagonals and then I fill in the space. But again, there's lots of schools of thought as to how you actually do it. If you don't wish to do that, or perhaps you can't crawl on the floor and you want to go for speed, then that's where the tag gun comes in. And the tag gun gets pushed through the layers and will hold all the layers together. Now, the neat thing about these little tags is they can stay in through all the quilting process, so you leave them in. Take them out at the very end. If you're having to do this on the floor, it can be difficult to get to the centre of the quilt with the tag gun. And that's where you go to the charity shop and you get an old tennis racket or a squash racket, because you can slide that under the quilt, lift it up enough, and then fire the tags through the little holes. And that will get your quilt tagged together. Once you've held the layers together, round the outside edge, I tend to go round by hand so I can finish it off, and then possibly go round on the machine. But if you do go round the edge on the machine, you have to use the walking foot or do it free motion. Because if you go round the edge with 3 layers of fabric, 1 layer will creep. Now, we haven't talked about the quilting. Quilting can be as much or as little as you liked. One very simple way of quilting, and I've done it on the red and orange one at the end there, is literally just to sew round the blocks, identifying the blocks, doing what's known as echo quilting, so we can get really close to it. Any block you like, folks, slide in there. Can you see the lines of stitching? That's just sort of echo quilting, a 1/4 of an inch round there, and that's where you could use your 1/4 of an inch tape to mark it. Now, you might want to do free motion where you wriggle all over it, but that might scare you. And you might say, is there any other way I could anchor my layers together? And the answer to that is yes. You could actually use quilting ties. Now, on this small panel, I have stitched twice inside the edge of the star. This is a large 8-point star, and I'll show you that at 11 o'clock. But if I didn't want to hold the layers together, I could do a quilting tie, and these needles are actually brilliant. For doing a quilting tie, you could use any thread you like, a decorative thread. I'm using a stranded cotton. A quilting tie is nothing more complicated than in to the work, pull the needle through, leave a tail, don't forget to leave a tail, come up again. So we've gone up, down, down through the first hole, up through the second. I mean, this is hard stuff, this. And you'll never guess what you do with the ends when you've been down, up again. You tie them together in a reef knot, would be fantastic. That's right over left and under, left over right and under. Granny knots tend to come undone. Got a thread in there for some reason. Once you've tied them together, of course you could tie it in a little bow. You then simply cut the ends off, and that's what's known as a quilting tie. You see, there's no magic in the quilting world. It's just down, up, tie the ends together. Okay, once you've done your quilting and you've sewn around the edge, we can now turn our attention to binding. And binding can be done in 2 different ways. But it can be done, in fact, several different ways. I very often like to use the double pressed binding, which I do on the Bias Binding Maker, or sometimes I will use single binding, as I've got here. Now, when it comes to doing the binding, we'll talk more again about this on the 11 o'clock show, but the Bias Binding Making machine here comes with, and I've turned it off now, so I have to turn it on again, comes with a bias binding 1-inch tip. And this makes bias binding 1 inch wide. And I've got some of that exactly. Here's one I made earlier, right here. And it shoots this stuff out at 12 feet a second. Now, if I'm going to use this sort of bias binding, how I use that is like this. I know this is not the quilt sample, but I really didn't have time to do it. Incidentally, for those who are watching from the Royal Bridlington, it was an excellent weekend. Thank you. Oh, it was midweek actually, not weekend. It seemed like the weekend. What I do with the binding is I lay it on with all the raw edges together, stitching just inside the crease that is there. When you get to the corner, and this is where the important bit comes in. Let's move that thing out the way. On the corner, you fold the fabric round, and I'm going to demonstrate that right now. So let's tear this off, and then you can see. Just undo the stitching. I was hoping, that's it. I've been a little bit too slow in some of my demonstrations. I will go through this more at 11 o'clock. But you sew along, keeping the edge of the fabric together until you get to the corner, and at the corner you fold it exactly round the edge, making a triangle. This triangle is a no-go area. You will not sew into it. You sew up to the edge of the triangle. So let me show on this one here. Having got to the edge of the triangle, you then flip the triangle over, and you sew, and this is why I call the Carol Lane corner, because you sew right from one end to the other. This will, when you fold it back, give you a mitered edging this side, and indeed folds very neatly into a mitered edging on the back side. And you just slip stitch around, and that's where, and we've got these coming up on another show, the quilt clips are brilliant because they will hold it in place. Now that's very briefly using the bias binding. There's no reason why you can't use the quilt binding, and the nice thing about this is it gives you an extra padded edge, and you would do exactly the same thing. We can do more about this on the 11 o'clock show. So that is just a little taster of some of the things and some of the ways you can bind it. More coming up on 11, and I will hope we've got a few emails because there's a prize to be given away. Or, oh, we're going to do the emails later on. Genevieve, would you like to come back? Mind the floor, it's covered in
beautiful
stuff.
class. Wasn't that lovely? And great hints and tips as well. It was wonderful.
Thank
I
you.
love the
awesome.
the tennis racket.
Oh, tennis racket works really well.
Now those emails, we will read them all out for you at 11 o'clock. We have them. Thank you so much for sending them in. Some lovely pictures as well.
Excellent, excellent.
We will read them out. So
next time, right? You hold this. Next time we've got the trip round the world.
Oh,
okay?
let's have a look at this.
Just hold that up there, quick, because you've not got much time to do that.
There you go.
That's it.
There
you hold it. And we've got some fantastic fabrics. Trip around the world will be done. We'll get into this colourway, or we've got really, really bright, jazzy ones coming up. That will be the next quilting classroom, which is going to be sometime in February, I think. I have yet to make the quilt. But that's a trip round the world, bit squashed because it got slung in the car at the last minute, square in the middle, and it's done by the cylinder method. So you'll learn how to do that. Okay, right.
Looking
And
forward
that's
to
quite
that as
clean
well.
for a Sunday morning, and me.
Now, do stay tuned, of course. Coming up again at 11 o'clock, Jenny will be going through everything also. And if you want to order anything, of course, remember, you can do so on all the W's, createandcraft.tv. Now, I will tell you, the buyer's tape, Mega, has been
Oh, let
busy
me
in this
show you
hour.
it working. Look. See, look. This takes all the padding, all the pressure out, everything out. And all you do is turn it off. Brilliant.
Perfect.
Absolutely fantastic.
Now that's just £44.99, and you've got FlexiPay on there, so remember to open up that Flexi basket as well. 2 payments there of £22.50. Something else that's been very popular this hour has been the Clover Mini Iron. If you want to go for that, you've also got FlexiPay on there as well.
Brilliant to get into the cracks. It really is fantastic for that. There we are.
Lovely. £35.99 is the price there for you. That's the club price. 192527 is the item number. Now, don't forget, of course, the quilt that you've all been working on. You need that backing fabric that Jenny showed you during the class here. Here are the details of that backing fabric as well. 271330 is the item number. You've got 2 different coloured choices there also. And if you do want to go for that, £29.69. The batting or the... What's your name?
Wadding.
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 Here are the details for that also, of course. There's your wadding. 252259 is the item number there for you. Now, of course, some beautiful, beautiful details on the website. Don't forget those classes as well. If you've missed any of them, don't forget you can catch up on the website also. All the W's, createandcraft.tv. It's all in there, the Quilting Classroom. The quilt, of course, that Jenny has been working on behind us here. Beautiful, beautiful colours as well, and just lovely. Thank you so much.
Don't forget, John upstairs has been doing it. Little tardy, but he's been doing it.
A little tardy, are we, John?
We are looking forward to the picture of the... But do send in the pictures. Do send in your queries.
Of course.
You know, it has been great. And remember, it's sewing. Just play.
Absolutely. Keep playing, of course. And I love the fact that you said, you know, don't be afraid to do it.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to start. Just start quilting. We have everything you need in this show. And coming up at 11 o'clock, as we said, you're going to be with Dean at 11.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Dean at the 11. Oh, that always wind him up. Whoa. It should be a slightly racy show. Yes.
We'll be talking a lot more about the products that you will need for the quilting classroom at 11 o'clock also. Lots and lots here, of course. Lots to learn, lots to teach as well. Of course, you can order, as we said, after the show and before the 11 o'clock show on all the W's, createandcraft.tv. I just want to say thank you so much, Jenny.
Well, thank you for listening.
Wonderful.
Good.
Oh, I really
Get you
enjoyed
quilting
that.
yet?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And don't be afraid to get yourself quilting. This has been the 4th instalment. Lots more to show you later on as well. Don't forget to tune into our lovely Jenny at 11 o'clock. Thank you for watching. We'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.